The US, Russia, and China are now taking their war to space. The weapons in this war are known as space planes, and all three nations have developed their respective representatives at record paces, with China recently testing 2 different space planes in a single month. The bar is high, the ring is set, the competition is tough, but the US is not giving up to dominate in this new space battle. The US has gotten a step ahead of the competition by developing their first ever space plane. The concept of modern space planes seems to surround an American space plane developed over a decade ago, the Boeing X-37. In March 2021, a Russian news site reported that Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, was developing a space plane similar to the X-37. Similar X-37-like reports also surround the Chinese space planes, which are already being tested. In August 2022, state-owned China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation reported that the contractor for the Chinese space program had for the first time successfully reused a suborbital space plane. The vehicle had its first flight in July 2021. The timing of this announcement coincided with a second Chinese space plane that was already in space at the time of the announcement. Orbiting the planet, the second Chinese space plane was launched on August 4 from the Jiuquan Launch Center in the Gobi Desert atop a Long March 12 rocket. The size of the rocket fairing, as well as amateur sightings and tracking by the U.S. Space Force, all point to a vehicle similar to, you guessed it, the X-37. This seeming replication of the X-37 across the world is understandable. It has been the poster child for a space plane since its introduction, thanks to an unrivaled performance that has seen both X-37 units developed in the U.S. spend over 2,700 days in space. That's over 7 years. In fact, one of them is in space right now and has been there for the last 2 years. However, as the world powers close in on the X-37 capabilities, the U.S. is already going beyond it by investing heavily into space planes that could redefine how space planes work. The Dream Chaser and the Radiant One. But before diving into what makes these space planes special, it's important to first know how space planes work. Space planes are basically airplanes that can operate in space. However, that definition may be incomprehensive because, unlike conventional airplanes, space planes cannot traditionally take off from a runway, although they can land and taxi on it to take off. Space planes are strapped onto rockets to be shot into orbit, marking their first stage of the journey. Once in orbit, the rocket, now burned out and without fuel, is detached, leaving the space plane to continue its journey solo in the second stage of the journey. During this stage, the space plane must overcome significant aerodynamic loads and vibrations. It is supplied power either by solar panels, batteries, or fuel cells. It is maneuverable in space, communicated with, kept in thermal equilibrium oriented, and has heavy heat shielding to withstand the unavoidable extreme heating that comes with re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. All 3 space planes that have ever successfully flown NASA's Space Shuttle, Soviet Baran, and Boeing's X-37B have flown with this 2-stage 2-orbit approach because it allows the space plane to be small and light, since it doesn't need to contain all the engines and fuel required to reach space. However, it does have its downside, as a literal rocket load of fuel is needed during the first stage of flight to thrust heavy rockets into orbit. Recognizing this downside, space planes in the U.S. are now developed with an alternative approach to flight, an approach so conventional that it's revolutionary. This space plane would take off horizontally like an airplane and simply fly into orbit in a single stage-to-orbit flight setup. On returning, it could glide and maneuver onto any airport runway across the world, canceling out the need to target deserts, ships, landing pads, or oceans, as is the norm today. The U.S. is developing a space plane with this capability known as the Radiant One. However, Alongside the single stage-to-orbit Radiant 1, the US is developing another two-stage-to-orbit space plane that's more advanced than all of its two-stage-to-orbit predecessors. This spaceplane is known as the Dream Chaser. Dream Chaser is an American reusable lifting body spaceplane being developed by Sierra Nevada Corporation Space Systems, or Sierra SpaceX for short, alongside an Ivy League of technology partners. These partners include Aerojet to supply the reaction control system technology, Atom Works for the composites, Charles Stark Draper Laboratory for the guidance, navigation and control systems, the University of Colorado for human rating and BDA for systems engineering, and Lockheed Martin for airframe construction. Dream Chaser comes in two variants, a crewed variant and a cargo variant. The crewed variant is planned to carry up to 7 people and cargo to and from low Earth orbit, while the cargo variant is designed to carry 2 times the cargo of the crewed version, amounting to 12,125 pounds of pressurized and unpressurized cargo. Cargo could include critical supplies like food, water, science, experiments, virtually anything, even satellites. The concept of the Dream Chaser tickled NASA's fancy early on, and so in 2016, Sierra SpaceX secured a major procurement from NASA that would amount to over $1 billion. The task to fly cargo and supplies to the International Space Station in at least 6 different flight missions. By 2021, Sierra SpaceX had gotten another $1.4 billion investment in a series of funding that, according to the company, would see the Dream Chaser flying astronauts into space by 2025. In addition to resupply missions, the Dream Chaser is expected to be used for Earth observation, satellite deployment, refueling, and repair, among other tasks. This multi-mission versatility of the Dream Chaser is thanks to some key features. It has a lifting body design. It requires no pilot and can autonomously launch, fly, and land. It is highly reusable and so can be launched over 15 different times. It has a thermal protection system made up of silica-based tiles and a new advanced composite material that combines to resist temperatures that rival that of the surface of the Sun. It is also compatible with multiple launch vehicles, although it was planned to be launched on a human-rated Atlas V and 12 rocket where it would take off in the traditional 2-stage to-orbit setting. However, not too far away in Washington, this spaceplane that breaks out of tradition by flying from the ground straight to space is being developed. In conclusion, the US, Russia, and China are racing to develop space planes for a new space battle. While all three have similar designs to the X-37, the US is investing in advanced single-stage to orbit planes.